Coming up on tonight's episode of Living Ramadan, we speak to religious leader and educator Shaykh Sadullah Khan. We bring you a non-Muslim's perspective on Ramadan. Abdul Ganie Baboo Phoplonker provides us with an inspirational message. We speak to Zaheer Parker and Khalil Alekar about their initiative accidentalmuslims.com. A global Ramadan perspective comes from Southend in Indiana as Moulana Ebrahim Moosa gives us his perspective. And our location tonight is the Sunni Mohammadan Masjid in Harvey Road in Claremont, and we speak to Shaykh Fadihl Emandien. And we end with a musical interlude. Salam and welcome to today's episode of Living Ramadan. We find ourselves in Claremont at the Sunni Mohammadan Masjid in Harvey Road in Claremont, a mosque which celebrated its centenary last year, which makes it 101 years old, certainly steeped in history. We are going to be speaking to the resident Imam, Shaykh Fadihl Emandien, a little bit later on in the show. But right now we're going to be starting our program with an interesting interview with Shaykh Sadullah Khan.
Well, my name is Sadullah Khan. I'm the CEO of Islamia College. And of course we have 5 different schools on this campus: a pre-primary, primary, girls high, boys high, as well as a Hifz academy for memorization of Quran with academics. So I serve as the CEO, and I'm also the chairperson of the governing board of governing council of Islamia. It's a school with an Islamic ethos. So it's not necessarily a school for Muslims, but it is a school that's based on Islamic ethos. And of course the universal values and principles common to all faith traditions are imbibed and manifested here. But in addition to that also, we are of course an academic institution. And very often you find that institutions of learning which are religious tend to focus less on sports and those things that may be of appeal, the extramural kind of a thing. So what we have done is, besides academic excellence, in fact last year we have produced 21 A's, which is our best result in our history. So academics, but also coupled with the notion of the extramural of sports. And over the past 3 years, this seemingly religious school has produced over 70 Western Province, sports persons in 8 different categories of sport. So this year, Ramadan, part of it will be in the exam period. And what we do in Ramadan normally, first of all, exam period, kids go home after the exams. So there will be a shorter day, both Ramadan coupled with exams, but also we have a heightened level of consciousness where we try to bring to the fore the importance of reflections on spiritual matters on a daily basis, as well as a spirit of generosity, where we have classes raising funds, raising money, seeing to orphans, and various philanthropic projects are undertaken by the school, particularly during this month. Each city and each country is unique. Even in the United States, you'll find that it differs from place to place, depending on the cosmopolitan nature of that place. Like I was living in LA, very cosmopolitan. Some other parts are not as cosmopolitan as New York. So you'll find a variety of cultures. There's an international feel, even when you have iftar and so on. What they eat and how they come and how they do certain things and how they engage is very different, very enriching. However, there's a greater sense of community in South Africa, I think, because people virtually live around the mosque. They walk towards the mosques. So very often you find that there's an atmosphere almost of being in a Muslim environment. Whereas in America, you normally would go to a mosque and meet the people inside. But around the mosque, you don't have an atmosphere of Ramadan except within the mosque. In Cape Town, of course, in particular, it's very unique, where you have a overwhelming atmosphere of it being Ramadan. The very fact that it is a month of high intensity spiritual reflection and rejuvenation, I think of course throughout your life you ought to be good, but Ramadan is just a period of high intensity training, I believe, spiritual and moral training, where you abstain from the basic fundamentals of life. I mean, if I were to pray all day, I could do that. If I give charity all day, I could do that. But if all the world were to fast all the time, nobody would survive. Because why? You abstain from the basic necessities of life, eating and drinking. If all people stop eating and drinking, if you do this worship continuously, there'll be no human beings. And if you can't procreate either, there's no intimacy while fasting. So in other words, all human life will come to an end if you continuously fast, and if everyone were to do that. So it shows that you abstain from the basic necessities of life, the fundamentals of life. If you can abstain from lawful, basic necessities and fundamentals of life, why can't that train you to abstain from evil and wrongfulness for the rest of the 11 months? So for me, it's a month of high intensity training and of spiritual rejuvenation and of moral consciousness. And I think besides just abstaining from food, it also engenders a spirit of philanthropy and generosity of spirit, caring for others. In fact, you can't celebrate Eid al-Fitr, which is the end of Ramadan, unless you feed some other person who may be in need before you celebrate. You cannot do it after Eid, you must do it before the Eid prayer. Indicates that you have thought of some poor person somewhere whom you may not even know before you thought of celebrating yourself. Just the synergy between social consciousness, spirituality, individuality and community.
It's always a pleasure to listen to the voice of Shaykh Saudullah Khan, and he imparts some great wisdom, and especially working with the youth at Islamia College. We are at our location today, which is the Harvey Road Mosque in Claremont, and it's the Sunni Mohammadan Masjid. There have been many imams who served on the imamate here, and if we think back to many, many years ago, the first imam here was the Imam Nizamuddin Mulaji, and thereafter there were imams like Imam Amin Barans, there was also Imam Hassan Mustafa. In more recent years, it was Sheikh Abdullah Abdurauf, and thereafter Imam Ali Khidin took over for many, many years, and due to ill health, the Imam who was his assistant at the time, Sheikh Fadihl Emandien, then took over the permanent residency as the Imam, and he is the current Imam at the mosque right now. For now, we are going to be finding out about a non-Muslim's perspective on Ramadan.
I think Ramadan, it's a very important time of the year for Muslims and Christians, because there's a sense of inclusivity, a sense of community. I'm Christian and I come from Claremont, but I find that Ramadan is a time of month that just joins everyone. And obviously there's the lovely eats and treats and dates. I think that's my favorite part, but just a togetherness despite all our differences.
The area that I'm standing in here now is part of the renovation process that took place a few years ago. This wasn't part of the existing masjid here in Harvey Road. So this area is used mainly for the overflow of men on a Jummah Salah and as well as for Eid. But at other times for other Salahs as well as for the Tarawih prayers, often it is utilized by ladies as well. There's a section upstairs which is actually part of the old section, which was reserved specifically for the lady Jummah as well. So right now though, we are going to be looking at a very interesting duo, that is Zaheer and Khalil Alekar, who have recorded a series of podcasts under the banner accidentalmuslims.com.
But first, an inspirational message from Baboo Phoplonker.
The sure recipe for turmoil is when you harbor any kind of resentment. And sometimes it comes natural that you feel you want to resent something. You need to take that out of you, because when you do that, you create turmoil inside you, and when you create turmoil inside you, you automatically create turmoil outside you. In fact, it affects everybody around you. So really, if you want an effect in your life that's positive, then you need to make sure that you act inside you in a positive way. Remove resentment, jealousy, or any kind of negative feeling that can change the way you feel about yourself.
Last year, in fact, it goes back many years. I've been listening to podcasting for the past 4 or 5 years. And I always told Zaheer, you need to start something, because we come back from the MSA days. We were all about leadership and youth development and empowerment. And Zaheer said, okay, we have to start something. So I said, let's do podcasting. So he said, what's podcasting? So I said, okay, spend a couple of weeks researching, then come back to me. And yeah, Zaheer can...
It actually took place over a WhatsApp conversation. We were actually talking in a group WhatsApp, and Khalil mentioned this thing podcast, and I private messaged, hey, what's this podcast? And then he said, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, come, let's do it. And then he sent me the DIY of podcasting, so to speak, and yeah, the plan just took place from there, over a cup of coffee, I might add, and yeah, that's where it started, basically. I think in terms of setting up, it was just the idea that Khalil and myself had about wanting to live at this, or wanting to inspire people to live at their highest potential, to make a difference in the community. And so the content that we were looking to solicit from our guests was those sort of content. So our first few episodes, if people look back, we kind of we trialed it with people that we knew. So we were in our comfort zone because we still were trying to get to know each other, the way we ask questions, the way we ourselves ask questions. So the content we were looking for, we identified certain people we thought had a story to tell and a positive, uplifting story. That was the first dynamic, and Khalil can maybe add in that regard as well.
Yeah, it was difficult. We didn't know how podcasting worked. We knew what podcasting was about. And so we bought a mic, a cheap mic, and we started recording, and and then we tell one another, okay, but what do we do next? How do you edit? And so I had to do Google and YouTube and find out how to edit. So basically we did everything ourselves in terms of sending invites, editing, marketing. So it was a bit
and I think then the next step was then, okay, now what we're going to get a guest, what we're going to ask him. So we actually trialed it ourselves. I interviewed him and he was interviewing me, and we saw which questions worked, and then we basically put together a set of questions which I think, looking back, many of our guests have actually told us, wow, this is one of the more interesting conversations that we had. And I think that's the point I would like to make. It's more of a conversation. It's not a stiff sort of interview. We want to interact with our guests. We want to listen. We want to take and really dig deep, as Khalil likes to say, actually, and get that story behind the story. So that's what we try and get from.
So we had various guests. I think for me, Nadia Moosa, she was one of the highlights as well. She started an NGO, and it's called Women in Engineering. So she started in Cape Town 10 years ago, but now she's going to Brazil, she's going to Colombia, and Argentina, and Europe, and South Asia. She's starting to build that community. So that was really inspiring. She's also a global shaper on the World Economic Forum as well.
I think what's fantastic about all our guests is that in each capacity they've all added something, and when we study it and we try to package now the episode that we're going to air, and we actually realized the value bombs that comes out of each of the episodes was fantastic. I mean, I remember our guest Yusuf Mohammed, he mentioned a quote his father gave him. He didn't get into business to make millions, but to look after his family, and that hit home, especially in today's society where we are rushing to get the best cars, best houses. This gentleman was worried about the family. And then another guest, Marwan Sasmin, he told us about the story of how he came to his name Pigeon Pie. It stems from the days his parents were in District 6, and all of them. One of our guests, Iman Malaka, I remember Telkom knockout back in the day. I used to SMS, I want Kaiser Chiefs on the I think in the episode I learned that she actually built this system that navigated the SMSs. So all these stories are fantastic, and all the guests actually added a different dimension.
There's also Fatima Jakut. She's a Muslim female senior pilot, and by end of this year or middle of this year, she'll reach 10,000 hours of flying hours, and that's amazing. She's also doing a Harvard Business School program, and it's also that's also amazing.
And the other thing that fascinates me about our guests is a lot of the guests that we've had is, let's say, similar to our ages or maybe that same generation. And what's fantastic, and this is for me the real essence of what I like about accidentalmuslims.com, is the fact that when we're younger and you look at the so-called leaders and shapers 20 years ahead, those people that we grew up are now taking these leadership positions, and they're making a difference. They're becoming the change makers in society. And I think that's kind of, you asked the question earlier about what sort of topics or what sort of guests we're looking for. Those sort of people that's enabling change. And it's not just the CEOs or the professionals. We're talking about the entrepreneurs, anybody that's making a difference in society. That's the type of guest that we want.
For me, firstly, it's about getting closer to the Quran. I before many years I used to try and finish a khatam quickly as fast as possible. But what I've learned over the past 2 years is trying to understand the Quran, understand the message. So I even if I want to learn one surah for the whole Quran, for the whole Ramadan, and understand the meaning, the message from that. So it's Quran, and then also family. I think family is important. Having that iftars together. I think that's what's
No, I
important
think
for me.
that's fantastic. I like the aspect of taqwa building. Someone asked me the question yesterday, in fact, and I said taqwa building because as an individual, if I want to impact society, I want to be a better father, I want to be a better son, I need to develop myself, and I use this month hopefully to discipline myself even more, and what I do, I hope I can sustain me throughout the year, so I'm trying to develop taqwa in that regard.
What a combination. The team from accidentalmuslims.com, Khalil, Alekar and Zaheer Park, are doing some wonderful work with their podcasts, interviewing some very interesting people. We had a beautiful location today, the Harvey Road Mosque, and that's the Sunni Mohammadan Masjid. And we are sitting in the front, or standing rather, in the front of the mosque now. And you've just seen part of the member and the front area, which was part of the renovations that was undertaken a few years ago. And those renovations stopped in 2010, and that's when the mosque in its current state came into being. The mosque, obviously, as we mentioned, many hundreds of years old. It had its centenary celebration last year. Right now, though, we are going to be having a look at a global perspective of Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum from South Bend, Indiana, 2 hours away from Chicago. My name is Ebrahim Moosa. I'm professor of Islamic Studies at the University of Notre Dame. I'm delighted to talk to you about Ramadan in South Bend, Indiana, where we are about 150 to 200 Muslim families. We have an extraordinary spirit of camaraderie and togetherness in the month of Ramadan. During this month, of course, during the regular prayers that we do at the mosque, there's also Taraweeh and also Friday prayers. During the Taraweeh, we have a range of people who had memorized the Quran, who about 4 or 5 of them read the Quran to us. For the whole Quran is read here in the month of Ramadan. In addition to that, we have a great community spirit in the evenings, where at about 50 to 100 people come do iftar, and on weekends about 400 to 500 people come together to have community iftar. That is a real community building event. Since we are all small families out here from different parts of the world, getting together we are family of each other, and that gives us a real good sense of community. Furthermore, the Muslims in South Bend, Indiana, while they are small, they are also very influential. For instance, there's about 55 Muslim doctors that serve the community out here, and people in various walks of life, from people who are teachers, from people who are in business. So Muslims are also fairly integrated into the life of Indiana in this area here, and so they make a major contribution to the society at large, as well as keep the distinct Islamic identity. So in many ways, Ramadan in South Bend, Indiana is similar to the way Ramadan is celebrated in Cape Town, but in other ways it's also different. Thank you from South Bend, Indiana.
Well, we're nearing the end of our program for today, and I trust you've enjoyed everything that you've seen thus far. Our location, the Sunni Mohammadan Masjid here in Harvey Road, Claremont. And we're now going to be chatting to Shaykh Fadihl Emandien, who is the resident Imam at this masjid. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh, and shukran for having us here at the Harvey Road Masjid. I say Harvey Road because it's my masjid, is where I grew up in, so it's a coming home of sorts. But you've come to the masjid as well. When did you start as the official Imam?
Alhamdulillah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I began assisting at the masjid in the year 2010, on and off. I assisted with the khutbah on the Friday in the month of Ramadan and Eid, but officially I took the imamat in the very beginning of 2011, alhamdulillah. So since then to date I've been at Harvey Road Masjid. And
you took over from Shaykh Imam Ali Khirdin?
Yeah, in fact I was assisting him. Imam Ali Khirdin was still at the masjid in 2011, but in the last 2 years Imam's health had deteriorated, and since then he's not been as often at the masjid. But we still consider Imam to be one of the Imams of the masjid, alhamdulillah.
Definitely, we make dua that Allah grant him shifa, inshallah.
Ameen,
ameen. What programs are there at the masjid during the month of Ramadan?
Alhamdulillah, because of the location of the masjid, the community is not that big. So we have our Taraweeh, which we complete the entire Quran during the month of Ramadan. We have our lecture after the night of Taraweeh. And in the month of Ramadan, a few weeks ago, we had an iftar program where we invited an orphanage and we hosted them for the day. Alhamdulillah, we had a dhikr program. We were addressed by one of the shuyukh, and we broke our fast with them, alhamdulillah, which was very inspiring during the month of Ramadan. And that is something that we keep, and obviously the Eid program coming, inshallah, that will also be at the masjid, inshallah.
Something that I find quite interesting about the masjid as well is that a lot of the former residents of Claremont still come and gravitate back to the masjid for Tarawih as well as for Eid especially.
Yeah, no, inshallah, for Jummah also as well. You know, the residents really love this masjid, alhamdulillah. And if you come to the masjid, you'll know why. You know, there's a warmth in the masjid when you enter, the people are friendly. So yes, the people are not coming from next door to the masjid, from across the road. They're coming from places like Grassy Park, from Surrey Estate, from Menenberg. They're still coming to, because this is their home ground. They grew up here, they still have an attachment, and even their children are still attending the masjid, alhamdulillah. So this is the house of Allah, and their connection is, even though they have spread around Cape Town, their connection is still the masjid here in Harvey Road, alhamdulillah.
And on a Friday for Jummah, there's still a big attendance from the Livingston High School students and schools in the area as well?
Now, alhamdulillah, Livingston High School actually takes up a quarter of the masjid on a Friday for Jummah. And again, the CBD, the central business area, the people working at Kenwood Center, they also come and attend. So the masjid is actually very full. In fact, we're standing outside on Fridays as well. So the masjid is well attended on a Friday, alhamdulillah, for Jummah.
We are in the last few days of Ramadan now, and Eid is pretty much on our doorstep. Just a message from your side.
Now, alhamdulillah, the one of the biggest lessons of the month of Ramadan is that Allah Ta'ala teaches us in this month of Ramadan what our limitations are and what our achievements can be. You know, outside of the month of Ramadan, we don't achieve as much because we don't try hard enough. In the month of Ramadan, because of the absence of food and drink, we try to get closer because of the barakah of the month of Ramadan. So Allah is teaching us whatever we can achieve during the month of Ramadan is something that we can go over into the other 11 months of the year, and we can become that person, that Muslim that Allah Ta'ala wants us to be. So that is the basic lesson from the month of Ramadan. Whatever I achieve during the month of Ramadan, you know, the recitation of the Holy Quran, the dhikr, the adhkar, the sunnah salah in the form of tarawih. So outside the month of Ramadan, nothing stops me from doing and performing, you know, more than what is expected from me. So, you know, I need to look at myself and understand that I can achieve much more because Allah Ta'ala had created me special, and Allah Ta'ala loves me, and Allah Ta'ala wants me to achieve the best of achievements, which is Jannatul Firdaus. Amin thumma amin. May Allah grant us all that, and that is something that we all can achieve. So that is what we need to take from the month of Ramadan, inshallah.
Shukran for your time, Shaykh, and we appreciate you having us here today.
Alhamdulillah. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Shaykh Fadihl Emandien, the resident Imam here at the Sunni Mohammadan Masjid in Harvey Road, our location for today's episode of Living Ramadan. We have come to the end of today's program, and we hope that you'll join us again tomorrow night, inshallah, same time, same place on Deen TV for another edition of Living Ramadan. I end off by saying, as I always do, to cherish every moment in the company of the special people in your life. Let them know as often as you can that they are important to you and that you appreciate having them around. I share this greeting with you. I wish you peace and blessings.
محمد وآل محمد يا مسلمين صلوا عليه اللهم صل على محمد وصح محمد يا مؤمنين صلوا عليه لطيف خبير سميع بصير جليل رقيب مجيب غفور شكور ودود قيوم رؤوف صبور مجيد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا مسلمين صلوا عليه اللهم صل على محمد وصحبه يا مؤمنين صلوا عليه